A few weeks ago, Alan Gilbert curated and conducted the New York Philharmonic in a program of 2 pieces in conversation. There was no intermission, only 30 seconds of silence and darkness between Arnold Schoenberg's Survivor from Warsaw and Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy. The Schoenberg piece brought us to the darkest depths. The music chilled, and a narrator, the survivor in the title, recounts in a rhythmic song speech, Sprechstimme, being beaten unconscious in a morning roll call in a concentration camp. The music and narration rises to a crescendo and then is silenced by the stampede of 100 men. The men fill the aisles of the theater and in unison belt out the words of the Shema. Not in the major motif of Shema Yisrael, but in the 12-tone scale of Schoenberg, and I won't try and sing it. It is awe-inspiring, majestic, dynamic, and alive. The 100-man choir, the Jewish prisoners walking to their deaths, chant the Shema and the Vahavta in an ultimate resistance, a spiritual rejection of the death that awaits them when the last note is played. But in this performance, as soon as the last note rings out, the lights go off. There is silence. Nobody claps. The choir disappears, and the next thing we hear are the opening notes of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy. I attended this concert with Rabbi Josh, and we sat there completely spellbound. The conversation between the words and the worlds of the Shema, with a full orchestra, with intricate rhythm and scale, with 100 men of every color and ethnicity belting out their final words, the silence and the darkness, and then the incomprehensible Ode to Joy. I had no words. So 1,000+ years ago, before Alan Gilbert conducted and then stepped down from conducting the New York Philharmonic, our sages had a similar idea. What happens to our creed? What happens to the Shema when we put it in conversation with another text? How does it impact how we chant or speak these words that are at the heart of our liturgy? So in Tractate Brachot, the Babylonian Talmud, page 12b, go look it up. The sages take Bilam's 3 poetic curses come blessings from this week's Parsha, and they place them smack in the middle of the Shema. In fact, they assert that perhaps this text, these blessings of Bilam, they would have been an essential part of the original Shema. They were in there, and they got cut. How would the addition of this text change the meaning of the Shema? How would it impact our relationship with the text and, by extension, our relationship with Judaism? So it's been a year since we last spent time with this Parsha, so I thought we might press the refresh button on the text itself. The Israelites are making their way to the land of Israel. After victorious battles with the Canaanites and the Ammonites, the Israelites camp facing Moab. Now Balak, the Moabite king, fearing the worst, he hires this rock star soothsayer, Bilam, to come curse the Israelites so they won't attack him. Now Bilam, who is a non-Israelite, has a direct connection to the Israelite God, and after a tragicomic scene with his talking donkey, he arrives at a lookout point overlooking the Israelites, and he tries to place a hex. But Bilam has another thing coming, as we know, because Yud-He Vav-He transforms the curse that is in his mouth, ready to burst out, into a blessing. And so Bilam says, what can I hex that God has not hexed? What can I doom that the Lord has not doomed? He says, let me but die the death of the upright, and may my aftertime be like his. Well, now Balak is furious, of course, and he sends him to another lookout, because maybe this time, maybe from this perspective of seeing the Israelites, the curse will work. But the same thing happens, right? The curse becomes a blessing. And this time, Bilam says, the Lord, his God, is with him, with the Israelite. Look, a people like a lion arises, like the king of beasts rears up. Oy, Balak, beyond. He tries once again, but Bilam chants, utterance of the man with eyes open. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, and your dwelling places, O Israel. And then the divine spirit rests on him. All right, the refresh button, we're back. So now, let's experimentally place Bilam's blessings, his super praise of Israel, into the Shema. And let's see what happens. For the 19th century Hasidic Rebbe, the Sfat Emet, what happens is a chemical reaction of chesed bursting in the midst of the Shema. According to the Sfat Emet, within each new day, when every day is born, God places within it a chut shel chesed. Say that, it's so good. A chut shel chesed. It's a thread of loving kindness. He places or lays down a thread of loving kindness running through the entire day. But also, God places something else. Rega haza'am, a moment of wrath or evil. So each day, we've got this thread of loving kindness. We have the blessing, and we have this point, a spark, a flash of evil. According to the Sfat Emet, each one of us has the capacity to follow the thread through the day, to pick it up, and to weave goodness into the world, into a tapestry of chesed. Not surprisingly, even though this thread is more visible, each of us also has the instinct to chase after that tiny point of evil, to sabotage and destroy, and generally to muck things up. A tzaddik, a righteous person, according to this Gera Rebbe, is one who follows that thread of loving kindness and resists the pull towards the point of evil. She or he connects to others with a thread of kindness and goodness. Now, I couldn't help but think this week we said goodbye to a tzaddik in our community. Aaron Meadow, Zichrono Livracha, wove threads of light and of chesed within his family and between communities. He was, if you didn't know him, he was in the boating community, he was in the theater community, he was in the Romumu community, and he threaded between each and every one. If chesed is a thread, Aaron was a master weaver. With his smile, his warmth, and his light, he showed all of us true loving kindness. But most of us have not reached that level of tzaddik or tzadeket. And we struggle to find the thread, to stay with the thread. And by default, we are drawn to the point of za'am, of anger, and we lose touch with chesed. And so for the Sfat Emet, when we recite Bilam's blessings inside of the Shema, it directs us right before we sleep and as soon as we wake up towards the chut shel chesed. It hands us the needle and it nudges us to weave chesed, blessings, into the world. So what else can we hear in this Bilam-enriched Shema? I hear the words of Yehuda Amichai's poem, the one I read earlier. The curse turned into a blessing, and the blessing into love. Even when we begin from the darkest place, from a place of loss and pain and anger, where we long to curse and yell out at God, Bil'am teaches us the possibility of turning curse into blessing and blessing into love. The Shema then becomes a 3-step practice in heart opening. And let's be clear, it's not love for the sake of love. Bil'am, when he praises, he's falling in love with Israel. The people Israel. If Bil'am's blessings were inside the Shema, we would move from hear, O Israel, to love, O Israel. For if Bil'am, the outsider with no fealty to the Israelite people and many enticing reasons to curse them, if he opens his eyes and declares love for the Israelite people, then we too can look at our community, our people, and ourselves with love. Yet so often it's those that we perceive as our own who we most readily curse. We often reserve our most hateful speech for fellow Jews. The Shema, with Bil'am's message, calls out, open your hearts to each other. See each other's goodness. How many of us could use a dose of this message twice a day? An urging to see the beauty and goodness, the ma tovu, in our brethren and sistren. Okay, so the addition of these verses, the blessings of Bil'am, somehow didn't make it into our Shema. It was so close, but the rabbis decided it would make the Shema too long, which is kind of strange that that was a consideration when you look at the length of our Siddur. But now that we've put the Shema in conversation with Bil'am, perhaps our Shema won't be the same. When we chant, maybe we'll hear the voice of the Sfat Emet urging us towards the Chut Shel Chesed, the thread of loving kindness, each and every day. We hear the voice of Yehuda Amichai opening us from curse to divine blessing and to love. And we hear the clear voice of Bil'am teaching us to seek goodness in our fellow Jews. And perhaps we can also hear the voices of those 100 men, that choir, singing out the Shema, moving from a place of overwhelming loss to darkness and silence, into life, into song, and even into an ode to joy. Please rise.